like 48 hours or so to breathe on this. We've had a practice. We've had an interesting press conference. We have a game tonight against the Clippers. It's all washing over us, Tim. We've had some time to think about it. Now that you've had a little time to reflect, how are we feeling about the Mavs trading 2 starters, an unprotected first-round pick, and a second-round pick to pair Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic?
Well, first of all, howdy, partner. I want to get my salutation in there. This is a massive risk. And the thing about it is, look, they didn't give up what you usually have to get up to get a superstar talent. And that's for obvious reasons, because this is a superstar talent who's got all these major red flags that come along with him. And, oh, by the way, they're acquiring him as a rent to own. Well, I shouldn't say rent to own. That's an old term, but as a rental player who perhaps this could be a long-term relationship. And so, there's risk involved there. And, somebody with the Mavericks said, yes, but there's also protection there, meaning that, hey, if this doesn't work out, if this test drive goes off the road, then, the Mavericks do have a fallback plan. It's not an ideal fallback plan. Let's not pretend like it's some kind of, hey, plan A, plan B, potato, potato. You don't give up 2 starters, an unprotected 2029 pick in a couple of seconds to say, well, if we move some money around, we can have max cap space. But that is the fallback plan. Kyrie's bird rights there could be value there as far as a sign and trade possibility. But look, you make this trade because the whole goal, the primary goal of the organization, since it's become clear that Luka Doncic is special, which about a month into his rookie year, it's been find a co-star for Luka. That was why they took the big swing on Porzingis midway through his rookie year. Obviously, that didn't work out. You got Dinwiddie out of the deal, so you got 1/5 of Kyrie Irving eventually from that trade. Sorry, I'm not very good with these. I'm discombobulated. I'm not very good with these AirPods. But this is a big swing at a no question superstar with massive risk, and it's not done unless 2 guys are really pushing for it: Luka Doncic and Jason Kidd.
The cap space plan B is interesting. It's, of course, it's real. Like, they could have cap space. That's a real thing. Probably what the proponents of that plan will put in the 19th paragraph of describing that plan, and not the first, is we all know the history of the Dallas Mavericks and their cap space. A kidnapping was once involved is part of it. And B, you having traded one, they still have the Porzingis pick out the door. They have a 2029 pick out the door. Now they've staggered those so that they have a 4-year window where they control all their picks, and they can trade 2 of them within that span. But as we've seen, 2 picks by itself, when the bidding on a star gets really frothy, unless you have a star young prospect to add on to them, that's not going to get it done. So you're almost painting yourself into a corner where cap space is the only way to get the star. You've limited some of your optionality, not all of it, because you do have those 4 pick windows, but the cap space thing sounds better, I think, in theory than it does in practice.
Well, and also who's the star you're going to get in free agency this summer? And the answer might be it won't be a star, but you can use that cap space to get assets. But let's be real, then you're back to square one with assets out the door. But look, James Harden, first of all, stylistically, I can't imagine Harden and Luka together be like the Spider-Man meme. But he's not leaving Philadelphia to come to Dallas. I think if he's leaving Philadelphia, we all know that he's going a little bit further south down I-45 back to Houston. Listen, if they thought Fred VanVleet was a star, then they wouldn't have dug their heels in at Fred VanVleet money for Jalen Brunson. And by the way, this does all go back to, if you would have just given Brunson that extension, maybe he's not he's not, as J Kid said, he's not the same level as Kyrie, but you're not this desperate to push all your chips in to make this kind of move.
Can I go on a Jalen Brunson tangent for 30 seconds?
Absolutely. It's your podcast.
That dude, the book on him is like, he's just short, not a great athlete, kind of like a fire hydrant, gets by with craft and footwork and guile. And I gotta say, like, he's got craft and footwork and guile up the proverbial wazoo, but he is quicker in short spaces than I think people give him credit for. His like first step fast twitch, not even first step, is like just like twitchiness. If you watch the Knicks, who play a lot of iso ball, he's like roasting really good defenders like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. He's like beating these guys off the dribble, getting inside position on them for floaters and stuff. He's been fantastic. And yeah, that is kind of the original sin of this. So let's spin it forward further. First of all,
can I make one real quick point in fairness to the Mavericks as far as their past history of cap space whiffs and versus now? Listen, one of the main attractions of hiring former longtime Nike executive Nico Harrison as your general manager is he does have strong relationships, not just with players, but especially with players, agents as well, throughout the league. I do think he can be more effective as a recruiter than Donnie Nelson was. I also think players will be much more interested in playing for Jason Kidd than they were for Rick Carlisle.
And with Luka Doncic.
We all have immense respect for Dirk Nowitzki, but you're talking about recruiting to a 23-year-old MVP candidate versus a 30-something. Hey, how much elite basketball does Dirk have left? So I'm not sitting here telling you I think the Mavericks are going to hit home runs in free agency. I'm just pointing out that it is different circumstances.
That is very fair. And I said on my reaction pod with Wendy the other day that yes, the recruiting with Luka is just a different ballgame. There are going to be guys who view him, as ball dominant as he has been, as a very appealing player to play with, depending on your skill set. You're in Los Angeles. The Clippers and the Mavericks played tonight. I am in Los Angeles. I am staying near the Mavericks and have seen lots of Mavericks in the last 24 hours. What has been the reaction you've heard to Kyrie's press conference yesterday, and I'll just say what he said. He said nobody ever talks about his work ethic. He said he was an incredibly selfless leader in Brooklyn. He left the team in fourth place, exactly where it was supposed to be. He
felt what I'm supposed to do.
he did. He was incredibly selfless as a leader. He felt disrespected by the Nets brass and wished he had done more research on them. Hashtag doing your own research. And yeah, what was the reaction you got from Mavs people about that?
And look, he started the press conference off by saying he feels really wanted in Dallas. And that was almost like, the setup move to go on and go on the attack on the Nets. It's like the jab step to set up the going and dunking on the Nets. Here's the deal. There's an understanding. You don't trade for Kyrie Irving and just think everything's going to be, quiet and, peaceful. Like, there's going to be stuff. And frankly, I think that the bigger reaction yesterday was relief, because we're sitting there, we get into the practice over at USC. We get in there and Kyrie scrimmage, and then I think it was the Daily Beast had this story about Kyrie deleting the Instagram post that apologized for posting the movie that, obviously led to his suspension and all that. And it's just like, man, like literally not even through a first practice, and this is a potential major controversy. So I think more than anything, there was there was a series of questions there, and he kind of took a while to get to it, but he at least said, I stand by my apology. So that was kind of like, okay, this is not going to be some kind of crazy, here we go again controversy in that regards. And that's the thing. It's like when you have Kyrie Irving, it's just like you hope that day is not the day where things just go haywire. And he's talking about, why isn't the focus of my work ethic? Why is it all on the off the court stuff? It's like, Kyrie, man, listen, if you think like people want to come in here and talk about like anti-Semitic controversy on a constant basis, like, dude, I don't know anybody who got into sports journalism with that being their goal. Like, trust me, we would love to talk about basketball. We would love to talk about the fact that this is, that he is one of the most brilliant offensive creators, certainly of this generation, one of the best ball handlers and, 6'2" type of finishers in the history of the game. But there's always so much other stuff. And then that other stuff, like, he barely played in half the games when he was in with the Nets, mostly because of all this other stuff. So it's hard to focus on the basketball brilliance. And obviously the guy, you're not that skilled without putting a lot of work in. But the other thing about, if you want to talk about work ethic, you show up to your actual job that you get paid for the vast majority of the time. And he hadn't done that. And we'll see how it goes in Dallas. But I'll say this, the feedback I got from people in the league before the Mavericks did the trade, and then certainly after, was, buckle up. I hope they know what they're in for. And they look, Jason Kidd's known Kyrie for years. Nico Harrison worked with him at Nike for years. Two of the Mavericks senior executives in the front office have come from the Nets within the last couple of years. They're not going into this blind. And maybe those relationships help keep things calm and focused on basketball. But more than anything, they know exactly what the potential challenges and risks are.
Yeah, I ran into a bunch of Mavericks people yesterday after practice. And I asked them all, like, so what'd you think? Like, did you see the clips? And they kind of all grinned at me like they were kind of like, yeah, yep. Well, we're gonna see how it goes. Game 1's tomorrow. We're pretty optimistic about the team. Pretty good fit with Luka. And the grin suggested, like, can you just please ask me anything else? Can we just talk about anything else? They were very smiley and just kind of like, yep, big trade. We did it.
And listen, from a cultural standpoint, I've talked a lot about how important Jalen Brunson was to this team's culture. Obviously, he's been gone for a while. Dorian Finney-Smith might have been the most well-liked teammate in that locker room. This is a guy who came in as a rangy, athletic, broken jump shot, undrafted project, and worked his butt off and developed into one of the better 3-and-D wings in the league. A guy who, there's a reason the Nets, like, there was no discussion about Dorian Finney-Smith. Okay, Dorian has to be in this deal. Then we can talk about the rest. Look, he's a guy who teammates love. He signed a 4-year, $55 million extension. Everybody who's around there is just so happy for him. And he's like, man, like, and he passed up money. He passed up money because he wanted to be in Dallas. He could have gone to free agency and made more. But and we asked him about that at the time. He goes, man, my mama worked at churches for the first few years I was in the league. Like, I just got $55 million. Like, life is good. He's going to be missed in that locker room. Spencer Dinwiddie, for all the just damage on his reputation coming from that brief stint in Washington, he really fit well in that locker room. But hey, there's an understanding too that, that team wasn't going to win as it was constructed. They really needed a legitimate co-star. Kyrie's talent is through the roof. And so, hey, buckle up.
I think the fit on offense is going to be extraordinary. And I've seen a lot of hand-wringing about, well, there's only one ball. We all know what Luka does when he doesn't have the ball. He's usually at half court, just sort of relaxing, doing nothing. Well, how is he going to adapt to Kyrie? He's going to want some juice with the ball. How is Kyrie going to adapt to the highest usage rate player in the league, monopolizing the offense. I think they're both brilliant basketball players, and they'll adapt. And the fact that they can both shoot, dribble, and pass at high levels, it makes it a pretty seamless fit to me. I mean, it's not always going to look like the 2014 Spurs moving the ball, but it could look a lot like the 2018 Rockets with James Harden and Chris Paul. And I do think, this is a team that has been A, completely dependent on Luka, and B, completely dependent on threes and free throws. They are toward the top of the league in free throws, mostly because of Luka. Mm-hmm. Kyrie is going to add an injection of pace, mid-range shooting, unpredictability, and if they go about this the right way, and Jason Kidd forgot more about basketball in the last 5 minutes than I will ever know in my life, they will lean hard into the Luka Kyrie / Kyrie Luka pick and roll 2-man game, just as the Cavs did with LeBron and Kyrie, because it just presents a host of bad choices, no matter who's the ball handler and who's the screener. And is Luka going to be willing to be a screener for Kyrie? He should lean into it. We'll see. But, Kyrie can screen for Luka. If there's a point guard on Kyrie, you can't switch it because Luka will beat the crap out of you in the post. If you hedge it, Kyrie can flare out for threes. He can roll into open space and become a playmaker, switch it around, vice versa. I think offensively it'll be fine.
Yeah, and no question. Luka, there was a game recently where he set several screens, and he was asked about screening after the game, and he kind of got that little Luka grin. He said, "Well, I've got a wide body." So he looks more like a pulling guard than a point guard sometimes, and he can use that body to screen. And look, is there going to be some my turn, your turn basketball? Sure.
That's the case for every team. It's every team.
But you know what? If you're going to play my turn, your turn, play that style of basketball when you've got, we can argue, 2 of the top 5 ISO players in the league, 2 of the top 2. I mean, it's a very short list statistically, 2 of the top 10. But so there will be some of that. It's an ego management thing, if anything, but look, they're going to score a ton of points. As far as the ego management goes, again, this trade doesn't happen unless Luka Doncic wants it to happen. So he needs to understand, along with that, he has to adapt a little bit. He has to give the ball up a little bit. He has to play differently a little bit. But Jason Kidd made a point to say, hey, this isn't 2 23-year-olds trying to figure out who's the alpha. We understand this is Luka's team, still Luka's team, and it's going to be Luka's team. And so basically, very clearly, Kyrie, you are the co-star, the sidekick, however you want to, 1B, whatever you want to say. But it's Luka's show, and this trade was made in large part to convince Luka, hey, we will go all in for championships as long as we have you. The other thing, whether this particular partnership works out or not, the Mavericks get to see how Luka plays when he has another bona fide, no questions asked superstar alongside with him. And one thing that we have seen a lot of, by the way, is teams trapping Luka basically as soon as he crosses half court. Hey, we'd rather play 4-on-3 than let you go 1-on-1.
We don't have any faith that any of your other players can dribble and make plays. And some of them can sometimes, but we're willing to take the chance that our defense is good enough to beat the sometimes.
Right. And you're not taking it. You're not letting Kyrie, run downhill playing 4-on-3, as Theo Pinson, legendary hype man and former Kyrie teammate in Brooklyn said, he basically pick your poison. Well, you want to trap Luka? Cool. We'll swing it to another killer. And you're not letting Kyrie play 4-on-3. That's not a reasonable option. And then the last thing here is it's not just about how does it fit with Luka. Obviously, Luka, especially in the playoffs, is probably going to play 40 minutes a game. One of the biggest problems for the Mavericks, they just got their first win in the game Luka has missed this year. They're now 1-7. This offense has produced at the best rate in the NBA, would be number 1 in the NBA with just Luka on the floor, number 30 without. If Kyrie is available, and he isn't always, but if he is, it ain't going to be the worst offense in the NBA when Luka rests.
Yeah, and that's the obvious point to sort of jump off to. I think if there's, look, we all know that the big question is defense, right? Like, it doesn't take a basketball genius to look at this team and say you just traded your best perimeter defender who can guard anything from 1 to 4 and got a not good defensive player. I mean, Kyrie can dial it up against point guards when he wants to, but he's undersized against every other position and he doesn't always want to. If there's a broader, even other roster issue than that, I think trading 2 perimeter players and 1 wing for 1 perimeter player who's a point guard has thinned out their perimeter rotation to the point where I think the roster is a little too lopsided toward big men. And so you project, like, I don't know even who the starting lineup is going to be. If you asked me right now to guess who their starting lineup is when they get everybody healthy and available, I think I would pick Kyrie, Bullock.
You might want to put Luka in there. I think he'll be in there.
Oh, he'll be. We're going to get to Luka. Kyrie, Bullock, Josh Green, Luka, and Dwight Powell, which means Hardaway comes off the bench. Wood comes back off the bench. Now, there are many other iterations of that where you can slide Hardaway.
Who's bench?
Hardaway and Christian Wood.
Yeah, whose bench are they coming off of?
Oh, well, we have some days to go before the trade deadline.
Yeah, and they're both being shopped. I think most likely is the Mavericks won't be able to find value there. I agree with you as far as that would be their best lineup. Locker room management can be difficult in the NBA.
Yes, but my broader point is you have the 2 star ball handlers, and after that we're down to, I think, 3 perimeter players, 3 wings / guards who you really, really trust to the degree you trust them. Hardaway, Bullock, and Green, who has become a massively important player for their team and a redemption story for the front office that is mostly gone, that drafted him over Desmond Bane and got shit on it every single day. And by the way, still rather have Desmond Bane, but Josh Green's pretty good.
Shout out Bob Voulgaris.
And I've been on Josh Green Island. You can check my 10 things columns. I have the receipts. I've been on Josh Green Island when he wasn't playing. He's a good player. So
keeping him out of this trade was, if there was a negotiating win for the Mavericks in this trade, it was keeping Josh Green out of it.
Just like the Wolves won the Gobert trade by keeping Jaden McDaniels out of it.
That's why I said if.
Which brings you to the bench. So if you start 2 of those 3 guys, Bullock and Green, you've only got 1 left coming off the bench. If you start big, like if you start Wood and Powell, which is a lineup we haven't seen that much of, then you can have 2 of them coming off the bench. I would bet they'll start smaller with Luka as kind of the 4.
Well, and one other thing here, that is, we talk about a 24th ranked defense that just lost their best defender, right? Well, their other best defender has been out for a while, and Maxi Kleber, I went to college for 8 years. I'm not a doctor. To me, it seems like a medical miracle. He tells us, hey, I think I'm ready to roll after the All-Star break. He's back to practice. He hadn't played 5-on-5 yet, but he's ramping up. And he is such a critical glue guy for them. Spaces the floor, but more than anything, he just keeps that defense connected. Starting him is difficult because you have to manage his minutes under any circumstances, but especially coming back off a hamstring. But you're going to get a guy who's a really key part of that rotation, does give you the flexibility because he can space the floor to play big and still have spacing. And then again, we'll see exactly what the roster looks like when the buzzer sounds at the trade deadline. They would love to get some kind of defensive upgrade from either Christian Wood. And by the way, if you think Christian Wood's getting a contract extension when salary cap space is the fallback plan, good luck to you. Maybe should have pounced on that one when it was there.
Was it ever there?
Huh?
Was it ever really there?
They were willing to discuss. I don't know that it was actually on the table.
If you're willing to discuss an extension that you know the other guy won't take, I don't know that the extension was ever really there, which is why I kept saying there's a less than 5% chance of a contract extension.
0.5% chance at this point. But like I said, they're trying to get a defensive upgrade either from Wood or from Hardaway. And to your point about the perimeter depth, this team certainly drastically upgraded that second ball handler. You went from Spencer Dinwiddie, he's a good player, to a Hall of Fame talent. You still only have 2 ball handlers on the roster. Jaden Hardy, rookie, second-round pick, just had 29 in a win over the Jazz. I do believe he has a bright future in this league. I do not believe Jason Kidd is going to give him minutes down the stretch, while they're fighting for playoff position and into the playoffs. So, if there's a deal where they could get maybe it's not the defensive upgrade, but if you can get a third ball handler, I think that Nico Harrison would pounce on that for Hardaway or Wood as well. Like the Karis LeVert Hardaway thing's kind of been rumored, bandied about. Before, I didn't get a sense the Mavericks were too excited about that other than the financial stuff. Now, I do believe they would pounce on it. My understanding is the Cavaliers have kind of said,
I don't think the Cavs are doing that.
Yeah, I don't think that makes us better.
Well, if I can't get a ball handler, I'd at least like another wing, which is why I'd be calling Portland. Is there any way I can get Josh Hart? Josh Hart's got a lot of suitors. I don't have picks to trade anymore. I got to look at what kind of seconds they might be able to offer. Is there any way that I can get in that sweepstakes?
That's interesting because I know that the Rockets almost they felt like they were really close to trading Christian Wood to the Blazers. Not this summer that the Mavericks got Wood, but the summer before, and then there was a drought of discussions for Wood until the Mavericks jumped in the summer. Help me with the timeline. I believe that was actually the Neil O'Shea era, not the Joe Cronin era.
It was
right. So, that's an interesting, potential, like the salaries would fit, I believe. So we'll see.
Well, but here's the bottom line. If that's their starting 5, if that's what it ends up being. Well, let's talk about Kleber first, because I'm glad you brought up Kleber. Yeah. Kleber is a massively important part of their team. He's a really, really good defensive player. Really good. He can protect the rim. He can switch. We saw in the playoffs last year, Kleber was essentially their starter. Like the Dwight Powell.
He's their closer. He's on the court for the most important minutes.
Yeah. And they went 5 out with him. They took Powell out. The Doncic, Wood, Kleber trio is +9 per 100 possessions so far this season. It makes a lot of sense as a double big lineup because of Kleber's defensive versatility. You can hide Wood wherever it's safest to hide Wood. And you throw Kyrie Irving in there and pick Bullock and Green. That's a real lineup that we're going to see. That's a good lineup. If Christian Wood's on the team, that's going to be a lineup that we're going to see.
Yes.
But if they start the lineup that I talked about before, Kyrie, Bullock, Green, Luka, Dwight Powell, the bench becomes, let's say Kyrie, because they're obviously going to stagger Luka and Kyrie. So one of the ball handlers, Tim Hardaway Jr., Kleber, Wood, and then a hole for the 5th guy who's a perimeter player, which is either I'm really overburdening the Bullock Green duo, which maybe that in the playoffs you do.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.